Blake, thanks for coming in today. Glad to have you. What I wanted to do is really start off introducing yourself, and we can go into a little bit why you're here today.
Yeah, I'm Blake Arabie, Senior Vice President of Engineering Quality here at OSP. My role here really is focused on technology, innovation, and quality, and how those really parlay into executing at the highest level and ultimately creating the value for our end users.
You know, it's a great segue into kind of why we're here today. And one of the main topics of discussion here is the NEXUS technology and where OSP is at today. From an engineering perspective, you know, tell us a little bit about the philosophy behind real well challenges and our approach to designing new technology that we're bringing to the market that really solves the customer's problems today, but creates value at the well site.
Yeah, I mean, that's a mouthful and definitely something that we always try to really engage with our clients, because ultimately that is, OSP's role in the oil and gas sector as a service company, is to provide that value right to the end user. And so really for us, the NEXUS system was kind of the first milestone we really hit in cultivating that culture within OSP of being an innovative service provider of these top tier solutions.
Sure.
And so really when we started to think about that NEXUS Packer system, we really, challenged ourselves from our years of experience in over 20 years of experience in this space of downhole tool technology. We really wanted to really see what we could do with connecting all of these different features and benefits everybody talks about, but do it into one set of tools.
Sure.
To where it's not 5 different tools to do one thing.
So in going into that, for the folks here at OSP that aren't engineers like myself, what exactly is a packer and why is zonal isolation critical to well operations, starting from the beginning?
Well, simply, I kind of think of it, I think the easiest way to explain it is like a drain stop, right? So you have a pipe in your sink. Sometimes you need to stop and create a barrier, if you will. No different than a well bore. We really have to think about a packer as a way and a means of isolating a well from pressure, fluids, applications based. So maybe you're cementing or whatever the case may be. But really simply, it's a zonal isolation tool that creates a barrier and prevents objects from going above and below it.
So when we talk about using the example of the sink, it's a way to create a barrier to where you can work above and below
exactly
that barrier, in different ways, or isolate something. When we talk about the NEXUS and where we're at now with it, what are the challenges that the operators were seeing in the well, and how does NEXUS approach that and solve that issue?
Yeah, it's a great question. So really, it starts with knowing where that challenge really sits, right? With every end user that's come to us for the NEXUS solution, in most cases, it's around operational efficiency. Not having the right tool on location for a specific application, selecting the wrong tool because they had too many options on the rig, charged for all the different tools, right? Paying extra cost and rental. And so you kind of take all these different approaches as to why the NEXUS was created. Ultimately, it was to save time on the rig, save money from a inventory standpoint, and also rig space, because we know that's a big challenge, especially in a lot of the P&A applications that we're faced with today as well. And then really, just reliability. So when it comes down to it, these tools are securing, if you will, as a barrier in the wellbore. They have to be able to perform the right way every time. And so that's the challenge that we really try to provide.
So you talk about NEXUS being kind of fundamentally different from traditional service packers or intervention packers. When we talk high pressure, high tensile load, where does NEXUS stand out? Why is it so much better than every other solution out there now? Mm-hmm. And where do you see this technology going?
Yeah, so I mean, the NEXUS system really, when you compare it to a traditional system, it addresses much of what, I was discussing, what the value seen, right? So it's addressing those traditional issues of it takes multiple tools to do multiple applications in a lot of cases. Well,
And give us an example of that.
so if I was going in a wellbore and I wanted to perform a positive, negative test, or hole hunt, or cement squeeze, suspension in the wellbore, a lot of times that's sometimes 2, 3, 4 different tools, or modular. You have to plug and play the tool. Our tool, what we did was we integrated an integral bypass feature along with a high tensile, high pressure mandrel and redundant sealing technology that allows us really to capitalize on doing all those applications with one tool. So therefore, the end user is grabbing one tool off the deck and running it in the well versus having to pick, choose, and hopefully they have it out there, and sometimes they don't, and they have to start logistically moving it.
So, you bring up a good point, and integral bypass was one of the things that I wanted to make sure we, spoke briefly on today. What do you feel like is the big advantage there, and why is it, help the operator from just an operational standpoint?
Right. Yeah, so it actually, fundamentally when we started the NEXUS and the integral bypass system, the idea was so that we could use the Packer system and stretch it across applications as well as well phases, right? So drilling to completions to P&A, one tool does it all. What we actually found out was that feature, once we started testing it and actually seeing it deploy in the field, it has such a large integral bypass feature inside of it, the total flow area that it has around the system, yielded incredible results around tripping and running speeds. So running it into the wellbore versus traditional packers of having the fluid run outside of the packer, meaning that we're just plunging the packer into the well, right? Just like a plunger. That hurts the well in some cases, right? Creates what we call a surge on the wellbore. And depending on what you're doing, it could create imbalances in the well and start to create problems, as well as, even more importantly, coming out of the wellbore. And so that was one of the real value-driven approaches from the integral bypass. Was one of our clients was talking, about how that integral bypass really aided them in being able to trip out a hole faster without swabbing the wellbore and pulling all that fluid out of the well, and then losing all that fluid. And of course, fluid is money, and therefore there you go. So
yeah, you mentioned the integral bypass, and I think that's one of the things that we really have a lot of conversations around, which is surge and swab, with anything going in the hole, right? And then when you look at, on the drilling side, a lot of times we talk about ECDs and different things about, making sure, we're getting the right fluid back when we're coming and going in the hole, running in the hole, or pulling out of the hole. And I think we're really starting to understand better now, to your point, on the time savings, the reliability, and then just safety and the flexibility that it gives operators, real time. When we look at NEXUS and how it helps reduce that operational risk, compared to legacy intervention systems, we talk a lot about integrating technology with service execution. How does NEXUS kind of reflect that philosophy when you look at operations and service quality, and that kind of hand-in-hand approach, and how we, look at our business from technology to operations?
Yeah, I mean that's right. I mean, whenever we start a development project, it's really keen on our team within engineering that has most operational engineering quality experience, to also gather that feedback from the team and start really looking at really what does the development need to be around, and then what are you trying to address, right? So like for the NEXUS, really what we see as the de-risk there, the factor there is really around the flexibility. I mean, you kind of said that, where it's probably the right word to say. It's being able to adapt that tool amongst the applications, and then the features that it offers de-risk by operational efficiency. We don't have to pick up this tool, that tool. We don't have to have these long assembly lifts, et cetera. So when you grab flexibility, what you're really doing is all the other things with it, right? You're bringing in safety factors, and safety margins into the scope. You're bringing in operational efficiency, which is reduction in MPT at some point, right? I mean, so by having the flexibility, you're really addressing the broader comments there of safety and risk and those kind of things, right?
Yeah,
So,
you mentioned about the NEXUS technology complementing other solutions in our portfolio. As you know, we break our business down between kind of drilling, completions, intervention, and then abandonment.
Right.
And between those kind of pillars, there's so many different service offerings and technologies that we have. Talk a little bit about that, the complementary pull through that NEXUS brings to a lot of the other things that we do on, single trip barriers and different things that we're doing throughout those 4 phases.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, like, again, NEXUS is the kind of the cornerstone that we started with. And really, we started creating those value solutions, right? So addressing things like putting a barrier in a well and then having to qualify that barrier, right? I mean, and that's through testing in most cases. So being able to deploy barriers in the same string but in separate moments during the well, during that phase or during that trip, those are all added, value that we bring, taking the NEXUS system and coupling it with our drillable technology, our Barrier Pro and Squeeze Pro technology, depending, is it a cast iron permanent solution? Is it a composite temporary solution? And being able to have well control in the wellbore while deploying drillable tools and being able to test them immediately is some of those value-driven savings that we've really been capitalizing on for OSP.
And that's a huge, to those out there, especially here at OSP, that's a huge investment for the company. As you know, we talk a lot about that, the cost to develop new technology and the time. And, with the other requirements with was it IP3 or I3P and
API 11D1, all the
correct.
standards.
I mean, it's like when you look at the
That's right.
standards and then you look at the requirements to meet those standards, what we're doing, what we're working on, it's really incredible. And I think that's a testament to the whole team here at OSP on, really sales, working with the client, understanding the need, what really needs to be there for them to achieve their goals. Engineering, being able to go back and look at it and say, hey, we can come up with this, A, B, C, and, deliver that solution, reach the objective. And then operations being able to say, okay, hey, give me something that I can go out there and do it, from a quality and a safety perspective right every time. Right. And, I think that's, it looks easy on paper, but as you know, it takes a lot longer in theory, and it always costs more than than what we budgeted. But it's really a big investment and it's a big achievement, right? And when we look at where NEXUS is going, and really what it does for the company now today, but where it's going, where do you see the enhancements and the next generation developments in NEXUS and in that portfolio?
I'll kind of take that in twofold, right? So, first, what you say about, the really, our standard, if you will, is really kind of bringing in all those different, what we call business units or divisions. We hate that word, but bringing in all of the different folks within the organization that have all of really the, aptitude that's going to progress the technology, right? Because it is an investment, but it could also risk the investment by, just one single group or one single person developing it in isolation. And that's why here you hear us say a lot, nothing in isolation, right? So really kind of first off, that NEXUS system, everything and all of the drillables and all of the investments that we've made into OSP, from a technology standpoint, was critical that we didn't isolate those conversations and didn't isolate those groups to basically help us broaden the ability to take this technology from a proposal and end it through a job on a rig and have a successful run. So, first and foremost, that development strategy has really worked well for OSP. And then, really where NEXUS is going, I think we're just kind of on the brink of it, to be honest, so having worked, in this industry 20 years, 3 different service companies with downhole tool technologies, really you start to understand, okay, like how these things evolve. And really you get to understand like where are some opportunities that we missed the ability to go and progress the technology forward. And really that's kind of been where we've been pushing all of our technology. How can we get it out of OSP's hands into the market, into the client's wells, so that they can benefit from a lot of the development this technology that we providing them. And so the next gen, moving forward is really going to be around HPHT technology. And that's where, it's going to really take a full team effort again, from having, some of our engineers that we recently brought on that have a lot of HPHT experience, and meeting those 20K, what we call demands, right? So 15,000 PSI today, it's 20,000 PSI tomorrow kind of thing, right? So we got to be always, thinking about the next iteration. And that's really the NEXUS system started from that point within the, sealing redundancies. Why did we do that? Because we knew at some point the next phase is likely going to be, let's go AP 11D1 V0. We talk about 11D1. Those standards are always evolving, and we got to continue to chase it.
Well, and you bring up a good point. Not only are the standards changing, but the wells are changing, right? We have, a very aging asset class, here in the Gulf and on land. And we look at HPHT intervention with heavy field activity, enhanced oil recovery operations, all the things that we're working on right now, and how that Packer is not only needing to evolve naturally, but just the requirements now, that they're being put under to perform. If the guys out here today and girls and operators, at home, if they were really to remember one thing about NEXUS and that one takeaway, what is it about this technology and really where we as a company are going over the next couple months to really enhance this? What is the one takeaway in your opinion?
I think if you were to think about NEXUS, it's in the name. We're interlinking, we're interconnecting all of the different types of applications and operations into one subset of tool. And really the value is continuously striving for operational efficiency, which we already know equals rig time savings, which is cost. It equals safety, improvements in safety, and it's just de-risking operations. And so whenever we think about NEXUS, it's interlinking all of those features and benefits of the tool that drive those different values.
I think that, this has been really a great time this morning to really kind of provide a good overview to the group of really where we're going with NEXUS. And I think it's a great example of what OSP is really about, right? It's technical solutions, solving real world problems, every day on the rig site, and providing that, practical engineering, reliable execution, and measurable value to the client, right? And again, Matt, thanks again for coming by today. I appreciate your time, appreciate your insight into this. Obviously this is a big focus for OSP and, where we're going. And, again, huge accomplishment for the group, the company. And I think it's going to be very exciting to see where this technology goes down, in the next just couple months. So thanks again, Blake.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.